You think Arizona is just desert and cactus. You are completely wrong. Some towns here look so foreign that you will question if you accidentally crossed into another country. Real London bridges in the sand. Mountain villages that look like Switzerland. Places where Spanish comes before English and nobody blinks. These 10 towns prove Arizona is nothing like what you imagined. At number 10 we have Patagonia. This southern Arizona town feels like it was ripped straight out of Argentina and dropped into the desert. Open grasslands stretch for miles with barely a cactus in sight. Rolling hills fade into huge skies that feel foreign and endless. The people living here are not your typical Arizona crowd. Bird watchers roam trails at sunrise, with binoculars pressed to their faces. Artists work in converted ranch buildings, painting landscapes that look nothing like the rest of the state. Wine lovers sip local vintages at small tasting rooms. Old cattle ranches sit scattered across the land like abandoned outposts. Nature preserves protect grasslands that belong more in South America than the Southwest. Everything moves slower here. No chain stores, no traffic jams. Just quiet roads and people who chose peace over chaos. Walking through Patagonia feels wrong in the best way. You expect heat and cacti, but get cool breezes and green fields instead. The calm is almost eerie. This corner of Arizona keeps its distance from the version tourists see in postcards. Ranch culture dominates daily life here. Horses graze in pastures while cowboys actually work the land instead of dressing up for shows. The whole town runs on a rhythm that ignores modern Arizona completely. It could be rural Argentina, and you would never know the difference. Bird species that you will not find anywhere else in the state stop here during migration. Serious birders travel from across the country just to spot them. The ecosystem here is unique, fed by wetlands and grasslands that create a bubble of life in the desert. Local wineries grow grapes in soil that should not support them. But somehow it works. Tasting rooms pour wines that rival California vintages. Visitors sit on patios overlooking hills that belong in wine country, not Arizona. The whole scene feels imported. Artists moved here decades ago for the cheap rent and stayed for the light. Now galleries fill old buildings selling paintings and sculptures inspired by the landscape. The creative energy here is thick. You can feel it walking past studios with doors propped open. Main Street barely exists. A few shops, a cafe, one stoplight if you are lucky. Most people drive to neighboring towns for groceries. The isolation is the point. Patagonia survives because it refuses to grow. That stubbornness keeps it feeling like somewhere else entirely. Stand in the middle of town at sunset, and the sky turns impossible shades of pink and orange. Grasslands glow gold. Mountains fade to purple. For a moment, you forget what state you are in. That forgetting is exactly why people come here and never leave. Coming in at number 9 is Tubac. This place looks and feels like you crossed the border into Mexico without noticing. Adobe buildings line every street with walls thick as fortresses. Art galleries outnumber grocery stores by a ridiculous amount. Spanish colonial history soaks through everything here. The Mexican border sits close enough to reach in under an hour. Pottery shops sell handmade pieces that look like they were fired in kilns south of the line. Silver jewelry makers hammer designs in tiny workshops tucked into hidden courtyards. Those courtyards sell the whole foreign vibe. Small, quiet spaces with fountains and colorful tile work that feels centuries old. Vines climb up walls. Clay pots overflow with flowers. You half expect someone to start playing guitar in the corner. The town formed as a Spanish presidio over 250 years ago. That makes it one of the oldest European settlements in Arizona. Walking these streets connects you to history that predates American control of the region. The buildings remember when this land belonged to Spain and then Mexico. Artists flood Tubac year-round. Painters, sculptors, glassblowers. They set up studios in old adobe structures and open their doors to visitors. You can watch them work while browsing finished pieces. The whole town operates like one giant open-air gallery. Local festivals celebrate Mexican and Spanish culture with food, music, and dancing. Mariachi bands play in the plaza. Vendors sell tamales and churros. The blend of cultures here is not just tolerated. It is the entire identity of the town. Buildings are painted in warm earth tones that match the desert. Burnt orange, deep red, sandy beige. Nothing looks corporate or modern. The architecture follows old-world styles that prioritize thick walls and shade over glass and steel. People here move slower and talk longer. Conversations happen on street corners and in shop doorways. Nobody rushes. The pace of life mirrors small Mexican towns where relationships matter more than schedules. That cultural difference is immediate and obvious. Shops sell goods you would find in border markets. Hand-woven baskets, colorful blankets, religious folk art. The inventory feels curated for tourists craving authentic Southwestern craft, not mass-produced souvenirs. Every piece tells a story about the hands that made it. Stand in the center of Tubac and listen. Spanish floats through the air as often as English. Roosters crow from backyards. Church bells ring. The sounds alone transport you somewhere south. This is not typical Arizona. This is something older and separate. At number 8 is Lake Havasu City. This one breaks your brain. The actual London Bridge from England stands in the middle of the Arizona desert. Not a copy. The real thing. A chainsaw millionaire bought the bridge when London wanted to replace it. He spent millions moving it across an ocean and rebuilding it over a man-made channel. The whole project sounds like a fever dream, but you can go touch the stones yourself. Around the bridge, developers built fake English-style buildings to complete the illusion. Tudor facades, red phone booths on corners, shops designed to look like old London pubs. The contrast against cactus and sand is completely absurd. Tourists show up just to see how weird it gets. They pose next to British landmarks while sweating in 110-degree heat. The whole setup feels like a theme park that never closes. You half expect actors in Royal Guard uniforms to start marching around. The bridge itself is beautiful, in a strange displaced way. Stone arches curve over blue water. Lampposts line the walkway. At sunrise or sunset, it actually looks elegant. Then you remember it is surrounded by desert, and the spell breaks. Lake Havasu was created by damming the Colorado River. The water is bright turquoise and attracts boaters year-round. People party on houseboats and jet skis, while the London Bridge watches from the shore. The clash of cultures is non-stop. Spring break turns this town into chaos. College students flood in for the warm weather and cheap beer. The bridge becomes a backdrop for drunk photos and wild stories. Old English architecture meets American party culture in the most jarring way possible. Retirees also love this place for the sunshine and water access. They buy condos near the lake and spend mornings walking across a piece of British history. The demographic split here is wild. Spring breakers and grandparents sharing the same sidewalks. Gift shops sell London-themed merchandise next to Arizona souvenirs. You can buy a keychain shaped like Big Ben and a cactus magnet in the same store. The identity crisis is physical and unavoidable. Nothing about this town makes traditional sense. Stand on the bridge at night, when lights reflect off the water. For a second it feels almost romantic. Then you look up and see palm trees and desert mountains. The cognitive dissonance never fully goes away. Lake Havasu City is Arizona pretending to be England, and failing beautifully. At number 7 is Greer. This mountain town looks nothing like Arizona. It feels ripped from Switzerland and hidden in the White Mountains. Log cabins sit between tall pine trees. Cold streams rush with fish. Green meadows stretch under blue skies. The elevation here is over 8,000 feet. That altitude changes everything. The air is thin and cool. Temperatures stay comfortable, even in summer. In winter, snow piles up, and the whole town transforms into a frozen postcard. Greer started as a Mormon settlement. Families moved here for timber and farming. The original cabins still stand, preserved and protected. Walking through town feels like stepping back into frontier days, except with Wi-Fi and cell service. Fishing is the main draw here. The little Colorado River runs through town, stocked with trout. Anglers stand in waders casting lines into crystal clear water. The fishing culture here rivals mountain towns in Colorado or Montana. Desert states are not supposed to offer this. In autumn, the aspen trees turn gold. Entire hillsides glow yellow against dark green pines. People drive for hours just to see the color change. The fall foliage rivals anything in New England. Again, this is Arizona, but nobody told the trees that. Winter brings serious snow, cross-country skiing, snowshoeing, ice fishing. The town doubles as a winter sports destination. Lodges fill up with families escaping the desert heat. Kids build snowmen while their parents sip hot chocolate by fireplaces. Wildlife roams freely here. Elk graze in meadows. Black bears wander through campsites. Hawks circle overhead hunting for prey. The ecosystem is alpine, not desert. You could be in Wyoming or Montana based on the animals alone. Lodges and cabins rent out year-round. Most are rustic with wood stoves and porches overlooking streams. No resorts. No chain hotels. Just family-owned properties that have hosted visitors for generations. The hospitality is genuine and personal. Hiking trails wind through forests so thick you lose sight of the sky. Wildflowers bloom in summer, covering meadows in purple and yellow. The scenery is relentlessly beautiful. You will not see a cactus for miles in any direction. Stand in the middle of Greer on a winter morning. Snow crunches underfoot. Wood smoke drifts from chimneys. Mountains rise in every direction. Telling someone this is Arizona feels like a lie. Greer exists in its own world, alpine and apart. At number 6 is Cottonwood. This town feels like a European wine village dropped into the Verde Valley. Vineyards spread across hillsides. Small wineries pour samples in tasting rooms. An old downtown area invites slow walks between shops and cafes. The wine industry here took off in the last 20 years. Arizona wine sounds like a joke until you taste it. The elevation and climate create ideal growing conditions. Grapes thrive in volcanic soil. Winemakers produce reds and whites that win national awards. Tasting rooms line Main Street. You can walk from one to the next, sampling different vintages. The vibe is relaxed and social. People linger over glasses discussing flavor notes. It feels more like Tuscany or Provence than the American Southwest. The Verde River runs nearby, providing water and greenery. Cottonwood trees shade the banks. Locals kayak and fish. Trails follow the river through riparian zones that feel lush compared to surrounding desert. The microclimate here supports life that should not exist. Old Town Cottonwood preserves buildings from the early 1900s. Brick storefronts, wooden sidewalks, antique shops and galleries fill the spaces. The historic district has been carefully restored without turning into a tourist trap. Real businesses operate in old structures. Art galleries showcase work from local painters and sculptors. The creative community here rivals Sedona, but without the new age tourism. Artists moved to Cottonwood for affordable space and stayed for the quality of light and landscape. Farmers markets happen weekly, selling local produce and crafts. Vendors set up under shade trees. Live music plays while people browse vegetables and baked goods. The community feel is strong. Neighbors actually know each other by name. Wine festivals draw crowds from across the state. Vineyards open their gates for tours and tastings. Food trucks park between rows of grapes. The events feel like harvest celebrations in France or Spain. Arizona is the last place you expect this culture. The pace of life here runs slower than Phoenix or Tucson. People retire to Cottonwood for the climate and culture. They spend afternoons sipping wine on patios, evenings walking downtown. The lifestyle is intentionally relaxed and centered on simple pleasures. Stand in a vineyard at sunset. Grapevines stretch in neat rows. Mountains frame the horizon. The air smells like earth and fruit. For a moment, you could be anywhere in wine country. Then you remember this is Arizona, and the magic doubles. At number 5 is Bisbee. This old mining town clings to steep hills, like villages in Italy or Spain. Colorful buildings stack on top of each other. Narrow streets twist upward. Staircases connect different levels. The layout alone feels European. Bisbee boomed in the early 1900s as a copper mining center. At its peak, over 20,000 people lived here digging ore from the ground. The mines closed decades ago, but the bones of that era remain. Old headframes, abandoned shafts, company housing turned into homes. Artists discovered Bisbee in the 1970s, when real estate was dirt cheap. They bought old buildings and turned them into studios. Now the town is packed with galleries, quirky shops, and creative energy. The art scene defines modern Bisbee. Walking these streets requires stamina. Everything is uphill or downhill. Staircases cut between buildings connecting neighborhoods. Some homes are only accessible on foot. The terrain forces you to slow down and notice details. Buildings are painted in bold colors. Bright blue, deep red, sunny yellow. The palette makes the town feel alive and defiant. Nothing blends in. Every structure demands attention. The visual chaos is part of the charm. Ghost stories saturate Bisbee. Hotels claim to be haunted. Bars have resident spirits. Mine tunnels echo with unexplained sounds. Whether you believe or not, the spooky reputation attracts paranormal tourists year-round. Ghost tours sell out regularly. The Copper Queen Hotel has hosted guests since 19... It still operates with original Victorian decor. Guests report seeing apparitions in hallways. Room 315 is supposedly the most active. The hotel leans into the haunted reputation without apology. Brewery Gulch was once the red light district, filled with saloons and brothels. Now it holds bars and live music venues. The rough history lingers in the atmosphere. You can feel the ghosts of miners who drank away their paychecks on these same corners. The mines offer underground tours. You descend into tunnels where men worked in brutal conditions. The air is cool and damp. Tools and equipment sit frozen in time. The experience is claustrophobic and humbling. You understand why this town has an edge. Stand on a high street at dusk. Lights flicker on in houses stacked down the hillside. The view stretches for miles across the valley. The scene could be southern Europe. Then you notice the desert plants and remember this is Arizona hiding in plain sight. At number 4 is Tombstone. This town lives entirely in the past. The Old West is not history here. It is the business model. People dress in period clothing. Gunfight reenactments happen daily. Tombstone became famous for the gunfight at the OK Corral in 1881. Wyatt Earp and Doc Holliday faced off against cowboys in a shootout that lasted 30 seconds. That half-minute of violence defines the town over 140 years later. Actors stage the gunfight multiple times a day. Tourists gather to watch men in cowboy hats fire blanks at each other. The performances are cheesy and earnest at the same time. People love it. They clap and take photos like it is a real event. The OK Corral still stands as a museum and tourist attraction. You can walk the exact ground where the gunfight happened. Mannequins pose with guns drawn. Plaques explain who stood where. The site is preserved like a battlefield. Saloons serve drinks in buildings that operated during Tombstone's heyday. The Birdcage Theater hosted wild variety shows and gambling. Bullet holes still mark the walls. You can drink a beer in the same room where miners once lost fortunes. Boot Hill Cemetery sits on a hill overlooking town. Graves hold outlaws, lawmen, and ordinary people who died young. Headstones have darkly funny epitaphs. Hanged by mistake. Killed in a card game. The cemetery captures the violent randomness of frontier life. The entire town runs on nostalgia for a violent past. Gift shops sell toy guns and cowboy hats. Restaurants serve food on tin plates. Even the streetlights are designed to look old-fashioned. The commitment to theme is absolute and slightly disturbing. Tombstone almost died multiple times. Fires, floods, economic collapse, but the legend of the gunfight kept it alive. Tourism replaced mining. Preserving the past became more profitable than digging for silver. Some people live here year-round, keeping the illusion alive. They work in costume, sleep in historic buildings, raise families inside a living museum. The line between performance and reality blurs when your whole town is a stage. Walk down Allen Street at high noon. Dust kicks up from dirt roads. Wooden sidewalks creak underfoot. A staged gunfight echoes in the distance. You have left modern America completely. Tombstone is a time capsule that refuses to move forward. At number 3 is Jerome. This town hangs off the side of Mingus Mountain, with roads so steep your car struggles. Old buildings cling to slopes at impossible angles. The whole place feels like it could slide into the valley below. Jerome was a copper mining town that produced billions of dollars in ore. At its peak, nearly 15,000 people lived here. Then the mines closed in the 1950s. The population dropped to under 100. For decades, Jerome was a literal ghost town. Artists and hippies moved in during the 1970s, when buildings sold for almost nothing. They restored old structures and opened galleries. Now Jerome thrives as an art destination. Studios and shops fill former brothels and boarding houses. The vertical layout creates stunning views. Stand on one street and see rooftops of buildings below. Mountains stretch across the horizon. The valley drops away so sharply it makes you dizzy. European hill towns have this same dramatic geography. Many buildings are supposedly haunted. The Jerome Grand Hotel was once a hospital where miners died from accidents and disease. Guests report voices, footsteps, and shadows. The basement morgue is open for tours if you have the nerve. Shops sell antiques, jewelry, and art in spaces that feel frozen in time. Wood floors creak. Exposed brick walls show their age. Every building has a story about murders, fires, or mysterious disappearances. The dark history is part of the appeal. Wine tasting rooms operate in old jails and firehouses. You sip Arizona wine while sitting in cells that once held drunk miners. The repurposing of historic spaces is creative and slightly macabre. Nothing goes to waste in Jerome. The roads twist sharply with tight hairpin turns. Driving through town requires focus and slow speeds. Parking is a challenge. You end up walking steep sidewalks between shops. The effort makes the experience feel earned and memorable. At night, the town glows with lights from buildings stacked on the mountainside. It looks like a European village clinging to an alpine slope. Then you realize it is Arizona, and the illusion becomes even more surreal. Stand at the highest point in Jerome, looking down. Mine tailings scar the hills. Old head frames stand like skeletons. The wind blows cold even in summer. This town survived death through sheer stubbornness. That resilience soaks into everything you see. At number 2 is Arco Santi. This place is not a normal town. It is an experimental community built around sustainable living and unusual architecture. Concrete structures with curved shapes rise from the desert. The whole project looks like a sci-fi movie set. Architect Paolo Soleri designed Arco Santi, and he wanted to prove humans could live densely without destroying the environment. The buildings use passive solar heating and cooling. Spaces are shared. Waste is minimized. The concept is radical even now. Only about 50 to 100 people live here full-time. They follow Soleri's vision of simple, intentional living. Residents work in communal spaces, share meals, participate in the ongoing construction. Life here is closer to a commune than a suburb. The architecture is striking and strange. Concrete domes, arched windows, buildings that look hand-molded instead of machine-cut. Nothing has right angles. Everything curves and flows. The aesthetic feels more European eco-village than American development. Arcosanti produces famous wind chimes sold to fund the project. Bronze bells hang from ceramic bodies, creating beautiful sounds. Thousands of visitors buy them every year. The chimes are the main income source, keeping the experiment alive. Tours happen daily, showing visitors how the community functions. Guides explain Solari's philosophy of arcology, a blend of architecture and ecology. You see living spaces, workshops, and gardens. The whole tour feels like visiting a utopian dream frozen in progress. Critics call Arcosanti an incomplete failure. Solari died in 2013, and the grand vision was never fully realized. Construction stalled. The population stayed small. But supporters argue the experiment still teaches valuable lessons about living lightly on the earth. Walking through Arcosanti feels like stepping into another time and place. The concrete structures blend with desert rock. Silence dominates, except for wind chimes ringing. You could be in an Italian monastery or a futuristic settlement. Definitely not typical Arizona. The community hosts events like outdoor concerts in an amphitheater carved into the hillside. Music echoes off concrete walls under desert stars. The setting is magical and otherworldly. You forget you are an hour north of Phoenix. Stand at the edge of Arcosanti, looking out over the desert. The buildings behind you look like they belong to a different civilization. The landscape ahead stretches wild and empty. The contrast is jarring. This place exists between worlds, fully committed to neither. But number one is where everything changes. Sedona sits surrounded by massive red rock formations that glow like fire at sunset. The landscape alone makes it feel foreign. Then you add the spiritual tourism, and it becomes something else entirely. People flood Sedona for energy vortexes, spots where spiritual energy supposedly concentrates. Believers meditate at these sites, practice yoga, claim they feel vibrations or see auras. Whether real or not, the belief shapes the entire town. Crystal shops line the streets selling stones for healing, protection, and manifestation. Tarot readers offer sessions. Sound healers use singing bowls. Retreat centers host workshops on chakras and past lives. The New Age industry dominates the local economy. The red rocks create scenery that feels almost unreal. Cathedral Rock, Bell Rock, Devil's Bridge. Each formation has a name and mythology. Hikers climb trails at sunrise, chasing Instagram photos and spiritual experiences. The beauty is undeniable and overwhelming. Sedona attracts seekers from around the world. People come to heal, find themselves, escape normal life. The town caters to this demand with high-end spas, vegan restaurants, and luxury resorts. You can spend a fortune on enlightenment here. Native American history runs deep in Sedona. Ancient ruins and rock art mark the landscape, but modern spirituality often ignores or appropriates indigenous culture. The tension between authentic history and commercial mysticism is constant and uncomfortable. Tourism has exploded in recent years. Traffic jams clog narrow roads. Trails get overcrowded. Locals complain the soul of Sedona is being crushed by visitors chasing the very peace that is disappearing. Growth is killing what made the place special. Despite the commercialization, the land still holds power. Stand at a vortex site at dawn. Red rocks glow orange. Silence fills the air. Whether you believe in energy or not, something about Sedona touches you. The landscape commands respect and awe. Sedona does not feel like the rest of America. The focus on meditation, crystals, and spiritual growth separates it from typical tourist towns. People come here to transform, not just visit. That intention changes the entire atmosphere. These 10 Arizona towns prove the state is far stranger and more diverse than deserts and cactus. From Argentine grasslands to London bridges to spiritual vortexes, Arizona hides entire worlds within its borders. You just have to know where to look.